I'm here right now with Alex Winstanley. Alex is the Managing Director of Happy Smiles Training. So I'm looking forward to hearing all about Happy Smiles Training, Alex.
Cheers,
Kick
mate.
off. Yeah, kick off and tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so my background was in education, and in 2019, I left my teaching job to co-found Happy Smiles Training, inspired and co-founded by my friend Hayden, who has cerebral palsy. We wanted to give disabled people the opportunity to really make and create social change. We wanted to give them the opportunity to have their voices heard and valued. We didn't see that happening enough. In fact, we saw disabled people being undervalued and stigmatized far too often and not being given any opportunities. So we set up an organization that is led by disabled people, creating inclusive communities by delivering training using their lived experiences.
Right. Wow. So what sort of training are you delivering?
An absolute range of what we deliver, mixed from inclusive language training to hate crime workshops, to inclusive children's book reading workshops, like one that we did this morning, to many other different opportunities and different workshops. And we always try and make things as bespoke as possible, depending on who we're working with. So if someone comes along and says, can you do a session on X? And we haven't delivered that before, it's something that we can tap into our team's lived experiences and see if we can deliver that.
Right. And what type of people or organizations are you doing training to?
Yeah, an absolute range. So my background was in education, like I said. So we started working with children and young people in schools originally. COVID hit about 6 months later, and that obviously all stopped. But from that, we grew a number of offers. So we've worked with university students and college students and police and staff and NHS staff. Recently worked with Man United and their community foundation. A really, really big range of who we work with, from, like I said, from council staff, schools, all sorts of different places.
Brilliant. And is there anybody like you out there doing this sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, when you first start, you think like, oh, there's nobody out there, and there are some great organisations, not all doing sort of specifically what we do. Sort of just some similarities. We're primarily a training provider, and we're very passionate about the fact that we don't charge disabled people for working with us in any way, and we create employment pathways. So that starts with volunteering, and then if that person wants to go into paid employment, that's something that we can work on with them on a one-to-one sort of bespoke level. I don't see many, if any, other organisations doing that. There are some day services out there, sort of traditional day service, that will charge disabled people through their personal budgets and teach them skills and stuff like that. And then I'm not really sure. A big issue with a lot of people who join our team say that, yeah, they've been learning skills, but actually they've not been out in the community putting them into practice. Where a big thing for us is we teach all sorts of different employable skills on a very bespoke level, just like a typical job. And then we look at how we can use their skills. They can use their skills and experience to positively impact communities.
So what would you say, is the key thing that differentiates you from other options that might be out there for this type of training delivery?
Yeah, I think a big thing for us, Mick, is we don't want any organisation. The last thing we want is for them to go onto and Google disability awareness training, click on the first link that comes up on Google, and do a quick 30-minute certificate, get a little course, an online course, and get a certificate, and it says you are now qualified in the social model of disability and this and and all these hundreds of things in 30 minutes. But realistically, we believe that the most powerful learning comes from lived experience. So all of our team have lived experience of disability, and that's absolutely key to everything that we do. And we think that that's probably our unique selling point compared to a lot of training provision that's out there.
And you started off at a time just before COVID. What challenges did that bring, and how did you evolve through it?
Yeah, couldn't have probably picked a worse time. About 6 months before COVID, But to be honest, hopefully it set us up to a point where we'll never see that again, hopefully in our lifetimes. And hopefully that meant that overcoming that is one of the biggest barriers we might ever overcome, and getting through that. And it was a huge challenge. On reflection, a massive challenge for me. Personally, for anyone who is leading a social enterprise will know it's a really lonely place to be. And especially when you've never known anything like it before. I knew why we needed to do what we needed to do. I didn't know what we were going to do. I didn't know how to do it. Just sort of learned on the run. People were saying, don't leave your job to do it. But I was in a place where I could at the time. I couldn't do that now, but I'm not in the same place financially or with a family and things like that. But I think through COVID, on reflection, it was a very difficult period and took a lot of my personal focus in terms of just supporting our very small team at the time. Every day trying to support them as much as possible, because as you probably know, disabled people, when it comes to any crisis, cost of living crisis, COVID, etc., are the most disproportionately affected people. They just always are. And at that time, and even coming out of COVID, disabled people have been impacted more than most. So at the time where, there was one member of our team, he left his house about 4 times in 18 months. That's a hell of a toll on someone, and a hell of a toll on someone providing support for them. And there was lots of times where I probably thought, I could just give this up tomorrow and go back to teaching. There was nothing really stopping me from doing that other than myself. So, and obviously, and then the community around that we started to build. So it was a challenging time, but really proud that we've managed to come through that and grow off the back of it.
Good for you for knowing your why, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's important, isn't it?
There's a lot of organizations out there that don't. So
yeah,
it's actually a good place to start.
Yeah.
So what does the future hold, Alex? What are the challenges and opportunities for you?
Yeah. Challenges are, there's going to be a million disabled people face barriers every single day. So just trying to maintain our team is always a challenge, because there's just always challenges that they come across through no fault of their own, and we have to support them through that to make sure that we're delivering high quality training and growing our training offers. And so that in itself will always bring challenges, but in terms of opportunities, they're almost endless. In terms of, we've got lots of plans for how we want to grow. There's lots of things we could have done during COVID, like a lot of more sort of virtual platforms and things like that. And there's still things that we consider now, but we know where our impact comes from and how we can have the most impact on our organizations. And we want to play to our strengths with that. So we're working now on consolidating our team and growing that really, really strong team, and trying not to, I suppose, scale too quickly, because we don't want to dilute our offers. We don't want to dilute the quality of what our team are doing. And also don't want to dilute the quality of support we can give to our team. Obviously, it would be great if we had loads and loads and loads of money that just purely could be put into supporting every single member of our team constantly, because that's so needed. But we also are realistic in that, we can only do so much. But the more we can focus on doing a great job of that, the better.
Good stuff. Well, best of luck with that. And a lot over the time since 2019, what have you learned about yourself along the way?
I suppose I'm fairly resilient. There's loads of times, like I say, where I'd like to think about, I could just go back to teaching or whatever that might be. So I'd like to think that. I'd like to think probably, I'd like to think that I am adaptable, adapt to different situations. I mentioned before, like this book just next to me, but this is one of 5 children's books that I wrote during COVID because we couldn't get into schools. And it just started with this book on my grandma about dementia, and then this book about depression. And again, they're all inspired by real people, called the My Has series, and inspired by real experiences, about getting real voices out there and using lived experiences to create change. And we use these books at Happy Smiles now, doing lots of readings. And that, if someone had asked me when I was a PE teacher and a Senko, would you ever write children's books? I would have never ever said yeah, but it sort of came from nowhere and has led to a lot of different opportunities. And I'm working on different books with different organizations now as well, which is great. So yeah, I'd like to think that I can adapt and yeah, try to take the best out of situations.
A great example of adaptability, yeah. And if you were to like hypothetically turn the clock back to when you started, and you can't stop COVID happening,
Yeah.
is there anything that, looking back, you might do differently?
Yeah, I think I'm very much like a lot of social entrepreneurs, and it still feels strange calling myself a social entrepreneur, even now, but I'm very much full on, constantly switched on, constantly trying to do 100 things. And I think what I would try and do possibly is not run straight into things, but try to build more support around me to begin with, so that I have had more people to lean on originally. Whereas now that I do, at the start, like I say, it can be a very lonely place, and it still is. There still is when you're 3 a.m, you're thinking loads of different thoughts. Don't get me wrong, but there's far more people to lean on and talk to now, and depend on. So I think I would look at building that support initially. But one thing I'd always say is, and it's to just try and trust in your future self as well. Like, there's so many doubts that come into people's minds and mine and everybody's. But I think just on reflection, whenever I reflect, I'm pretty bad at reflecting. And whenever I reflect, I think, oh, we've come a long way, even the past 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. So the more I try and think, right, just trust in your future self, it'll sort of all work out. That's I suppose a piece of advice that I always come back to as well.
Great advice it is too, Alex. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries.